Let me ask you something. If someone talked to you the way you talk to yourself in your head, would you consider them a friend? Or would you walk away? Think about it. That inner voice, the one whispering that you're not enough, that you'll fail, that no one really cares. It sounds familiar, right? But here's the twist. It's not helping you. It's holding you hostage. That inner critic has been running the show unchecked, feeding self-sabotage, draining your self-esteem, and convincing you that this loop is normal. But it's not. And today we're breaking it. I used to wake up already defeated. Before I even opened my eyes, my mind had already played the highlight reel of everything I got wrong yesterday. The awkward conversation, the thing I didn't finish, the fear of failing again today. That wasn't just overthinking, it was a mental trap, pattern, a script I didn't realize I was stuck repeating. And honestly, it wrecked my mental health. And I know I'm not alone. We all have that voice, that internal dialogue wrapped in worry, judgment, and fear. But what most people don't realize is just how much control it has. That voice becomes your default lens, colors your choices, it distorts your reality. It creates cognitive distortions that feel like facts. And worst of all, it convinces you that it's you. But it's not even close. That voice is a result of old programming beliefs picked up in childhood, shaped by trauma, repetition, and unchallenged assumptions. And if you've ever felt stuck in your own head, constantly second-guessing, battling anxiety, or sabotaging opportunities, it's time we talk. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you what that voice actually is, how it got there, and more importantly, how you can take your power back. For good. Let me tell you something that hit me like a truck one day. That voice inside your head is not really yours. It's more like a sponge that soaked up every word, every belief, every opinion you heard when you were too young to question anything. Your inner voice, your mindset, your thought patterns. Most of them were handed to you. Parents, teachers, society. They gave you the script. You just didn't know you were reading someone else's lines. I remember sitting alone one night, hearing myself think, "You'll never be enough." And I paused. That phrase, that exact wording, it wasn't mine. It was something I'd heard growing up, over and over, like a broken record from people who were carrying their own emotional wounds. That was the moment I realized I wasn't actually thinking. I was repeating. And worse, I believed it. This is what cognitive distortion looks like when it wears a familiar tone. It sneaks in as your own voice, but it's laced with old fear, shame, and doubt. And the more you hear it, the more you think it's truth. That's how negative self-talk becomes second nature, and self-sabotage begins its slow, quiet takeover. The cycle keeps spinning unless you learn to break it consciously. A practical step? Start journaling those recurring phrases that pop up when you fail or when you hesitate. Write them down verbatim, then ask, who said this to me first? This simple act builds self-awareness and creates space for mindfulness, so you can start reclaiming your mind from those borrowed beliefs. You can't challenge what you don't recognize. And the truth is, once you realize that not every thought is yours, everything starts to shift. You get curious instead of reactive. That's where personal growth begins, in that pause between thought and identity. But recognizing the voice isn't enough. We also need to understand why it speaks the way it does. And that takes us to the next piece of this puzzle. Most people think their inner critic is some cruel, mean-spirited voice out to destroy their confidence. But here's the truth no one tells you. It's just scared. That harsh voice? It's a terrified little protector, trying to shield you from pain by keeping you small, silent, and safe. Like a guard dog barking at shadows, it confuses growth with threat. It's not trying to hurt you, it's trying to help, but in all the wrong ways. I'll never forget the day I realized this. I was berating myself for not speaking up in a meeting, again. That voice said, "You're weak. You always freeze." But something shifted. I stopped and asked, why would I freeze? And boom, clarity. That voice was trying to keep me from rejection, from shame. It wasn't being cruel. It was just scared I'd get hurt. This shift in perception is powerful. When you see your negative self-talk not as an enemy, but as a scared child inside you, suddenly you stop fighting it. You start listening. You develop emotional intelligence, and with that comes mental clarity. You realize most of your overthinking, your hesitation, your doubt stems from a voice that just doesn't want you to suffer again. If you want to apply this today, try this exercise. The next time you catch yourself in self-sabotage, pause. Don't fight the thought. Ask, what are you trying to protect me from? Then write down the answer like you're interviewing that voice. Sounds odd, I know, but it gives you space. And that space is everything when it comes to psychological well-being. Once you learn to speak to that inner critic with curiosity instead of judgment, something remarkable happens. It starts to soften. And now that we've seen its true intention, we have to take an even deeper look. Because the next trap is far sneakier. It lies by pretending it's telling you the truth. One of the most dangerous things about the inner voice is that it wears the mask of logic. It says things like, I'm just being realistic, or I'm not negative, I'm honest. But here's the catch. It's not truth. It's cognitive distortion shaped by past pain. That voice filters every possibility through fear, not fact. And when you mistake fear for wisdom, you stop growing. I used to tell myself I was just being cautious. Don't get your hopes up. People like you don't get things like that. Sounded wise, but it was just shame in disguise. That thought pattern came from years of disappointment, rejection, and internalized failure. It wasn't self-awareness, it was an emotional echo from moments where I felt small. This is why mindfulness matters. When you slow down and examine your internal dialogue, you start to realize just how much of it isn't actually yours. It's recycled doubt, leftover judgment, and inherited fear. And until you learn to challenge those truths, your mindset will always default to self-sabotage under pressure. Try this. When your inner voice says something limiting, ask, who told me that first? Or what proof do I have that this is 100% true? You'll often find there is none, just overthinking dressed up as responsibility. This kind of reflection builds mental clarity and opens the door to personal growth without shame attached. The danger isn't that we hear a voice, it's that we believe it blindly. And when that voice goes unchallenged, especially when we're isolated, it grows louder. That's exactly what happens next, when silence becomes its favorite playground. The inner voice doesn't just exist in silence, it amplifies. It feeds on your quiet moments, especially when you're emotionally worn down and disconnected. That's when negative self-talk becomes a loop, echoing in your head with no interruption. You start to believe the worst parts of your inner critic because there's no outside voice offering contrast, no reminder of reality. Isolation gives your mind the microphone, and it rarely sings anything kind. I remember one night where I spiraled for hours. I hadn't talked to anyone about what I was going through. I thought I could handle it myself, but overthinking took over. My anxiety shot through the roof, and I was caught in a mental storm with no anchor. That's what happens when you hold everything in. The weight turns inward, crushing your psychological well-being. Silence isn't strength when it's filled with self-doubt. You've probably been there too, lying awake, replaying that one thing you said or didn't say or might say. That's not mindfulness. That's rumination. The cure isn't just distraction, it's expression. Talking to someone, journaling, moving your body, these are pressure valves for your mental health and emotional intelligence. Without them, the internal voice has free rein to distort your reality. Here's something practical: create a daily outlet. It could be as simple as voice noting your thoughts, calling a trusted friend, or writing down 3 things you felt that day. Don't wait until your inner voice is yelling. Catch it while it's whispering. That's how you build self-awareness and stop feeding the cycle of self-sabotage before it begins. Because the thing is, that voice isn't just cruel, it's strategic. It uses words that feel familiar and reasonable so you won't question them. And that's exactly what we need to talk about next. You ever notice how your inner voice doesn't sound like a stranger? Sounds like you. That's the trap. It uses phrases you've heard your whole life so you don't question them. You're just not good at this. You always mess this up. Those aren't facts. They're cognitive distortions dressed up as truth, recycled through years of negative self-talk and reinforced by past experiences. It's like having malware disguised as a helpful app. It looks familiar, it sounds helpful, but it's secretly draining your self-esteem and keeping you in your comfort zone. My wake-up moment? I realized this voice always got louder when I was on the edge of personal growth. Right before I applied for something big, opened up emotionally, or stepped outside a label someone had given me. That's when I started tracking patterns. When did the inner critic show up? What triggered it? Almost every time, it was fear masquerading as logic. Fear of rejection, failure, abandonment. And the voice didn't scream. It whispered things like, maybe next time, or don't get your hopes up. Overcoming doubt started with identifying these disguised scripts. Here's a practice. Whenever you hear that voice, pause and write it down. Then ask, would I say this to a friend I love? If not, it's not truth. It's an old tape playing on loop. That's mindfulness in action. And it's how we begin breaking negative cycles and shifting the thought patterns that have kept us emotionally stuck. Because here's the thing. Once you see the voice, you can start interrupting it. But awareness isn't enough, we've got to act. And that's exactly where we're headed next. The first time I caught my inner critic in the act, I was shocked. Not because it was saying something new, but because I finally realized, wait, this isn't me. That moment of self-awareness was a breakthrough. The voice said, you always fail at this. And for the first time, I didn't believe it. I said back, actually, that's just old programming talking. This is the shift. You don't have to shut it up, you just have to catch it. Overthinking, anxiety, self-sabotage, they all thrive in the dark. But when you bring your awareness in, it's like turning on the lights in a haunted house. Suddenly, it's not so scary anymore. Mindfulness isn't a trend. It's a tool. And your most powerful weapon is naming the voice when it shows up. Start small. Next time you hear something like, you're not good enough, stop and label it. Say out loud, that's my inner critic. Better yet, write it down. That moment of interruption rewires the brain. Creates mental clarity, it shifts your mindset, and most of all, it shows your nervous system that you're no longer in survival mode. You're reclaiming your psychological well-being. You're telling your brain, we don't do that anymore. This doesn't happen overnight, and that's okay. The important part is consistency. Every time you catch that voice, you loosen its grip. That's self-improvement in real time. You're training your mind to stop defaulting to limitation. But this only works when you remember one thing: you are not the voice. You are the one listening to it. And that's exactly what we need to unpack next. You are not broken, you're just buried. Beneath years of negative self-talk, patterns of overthinking, and echoes of other people's doubts, there's a part of you that's never been touched by all that noise. That part is still intact. And the moment you realize you're the one hearing the voice, not the one being the voice, everything begins to shift. That's where true emotional intelligence is born. Imagine you're the sky, and your thoughts are just passing clouds. Some are dark, some stormy, some light and harmless. But they all pass. They don't define the sky. That's what mindfulness teaches us. That the inner chatter isn't the full picture. You're the awareness behind it. And that awareness is your inner voice finally reclaiming its power. I remember one afternoon when I was overwhelmed by a spiral of doubt. Classic cognitive distortion in full effect. But instead of reacting, I paused. I took a breath and said, this is just old programming, not the truth. That moment gave me mental clarity I hadn't felt in years. From that point on, I started practicing this separation like a daily habit. It's a game changer. The more you step back from your thoughts, the more you can actually choose them. That's self-awareness. That's personal growth. That's how you stop the cycle of self-sabotage before it hijacks your day. And when you master that, even in small moments, your self-esteem grows. You start making decisions from a place of clarity, not fear. This realization isn't the end. It's the real beginning. Because once you know you're not the voice, you can finally ask, so who am I really? That voice in your head might be loud. It might sound convincing. It might show up like clockwork with every risk, every doubt, every step forward. But here's what you need to remember. It's not you, and it's definitely not the truth. That's just a script, a pattern, one rooted in overthinking, old fear, and a misguided form of protection. You don't need to destroy the voice. You don't need to win some mental war. You just need to stop calling it by your name. When negative self-talk shows up, when your inner critic starts lashing out, pause and notice. That's not your identity speaking. It's just conditioning. Just a collection of moments that shaped your mindset before you were old enough to choose differently. The goal here isn't silence. It's mental clarity. It's being able to hear that inner chatter and say, "Oh, that's just old programming. That's self-awareness. That's emotional intelligence." And that's what breaks the cycle. Because the moment you stop believing every thought you think, you get your life back. So next time that voice tells you you're not enough, too late or too broken, just smile a little and remind it, "Thanks for trying to protect me, but I've got this now." That's where personal growth begins, not in perfection, but in presence. Not in fighting the voice, but in no longer obeying it. And trust me, once you learn to recognize that voice for what it is, you'll start to feel something most people haven't felt in years: freedom. If this video touched something real in you, if it made you pause, reflect, or even cry a little, then do yourself a favor. Hit that subscribe button. This space is where we talk about the stuff no one teaches us growing up. Psychological well-being, mindfulness, how to stop self-sabotage, and how to rebuild your self-esteem from the inside out. Because healing doesn't come from pretending the voice isn't there. It comes from finally understanding it, rewriting it, and walking forward anyway. And if you're ready to go even deeper, there's a video I need you to watch next. It's called, "You're Not Overthinking, You're Overprotecting Yourself." If your brain feels like it's always in survival mode, that video explains exactly why, and how to finally calm the noise.